Okay. Good evening and welcome to our May 25th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting. I have just a couple of items to go over before we officially get started. This meeting is live on Comcast Local 27, Channel 27, and also on the Pacific Coast TV's website. We have several community members in attendance this evening, which is great. They all will have the opportunity to speak this evening. Just a review of for the attendees, the Planning Commission Chair Reddick, will open and allow a general public comment at the beginning, and then he will allow public comment for each specific item. Those wanting to speak, I will recognize by raising their hand, virtual hand, and they will be allowed to speak for the 3 minutes. If you are on telephone only, which I don't believe we have anyone yet on telephone, but you can push *6 to raise and unraise your hand, and *9 to mute and unmute yourself. Otherwise, tablets, phones, iPads all have the little icon that you can push, and we will be happy to take you in order. This evening, or actually this afternoon, and this morning, we did send, staff sent an email, myself, to the Planning Commission. There were 2 public comments, one this morning I sent and one this afternoon. I'm hoping that you both are all received both of them. They all are on the agenda, posted under correspondence on the agendas on the website. Thank you for your patience while we still are doing remote meetings. And I will now hand it over to Chair Reddick to officially begin this meeting this evening.
Thank you, Bridget. So as Bridget says, this is the May 25th, 2021 meeting of the Half Moon Bay Planning Commission. I'll call it to order and invite everyone to join in the Pledge of Allegiance. Yeah.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And Bridget, if you'll please call the roll.
Yes. Commissioner Benjamin is out this evening. Commissioner Gorn, we don't see him. Commissioner Hernandez?
I am present.
Vice Chair Polgar?
Here.
And Chair Reddick?
I'm here.
We have 3 commissioners this evening.
Our next item is consideration of the minutes of our last meeting, which was May 11th, and noted that Bridget distributed revised version of the minutes this afternoon.
Yes, there was just one change that was highlighted in the minutes.
Yes, thank you for highlighting it. Do commissioners have any discussion about the minutes?
Motion?
A motion to approve, please?
I'll move that we approve the minutes.
Thank you.
I second the motion.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hernandez?
Yes.
Vice Chair Polgar?
Yes.
And Chair Reddick?
Yes.
Motion passes.
The next item in our agenda, as at every Planning Commission meeting, is members of the public are invited to address the commission and comment on any matter they choose other than the agenda items which follow this, and there'll be appropriate time for public comment on that. But if you care to make public comment on any other issues to the commission, please raise your hand virtually.
I'm seeing none.
All right, I won't open public comment then, and we'll move to our next item, which is Planning Commission consideration of the proposed short-term vacation rental and home occupancy ordinance. And Director Ekus, are you going to kick off the staff presentation?
Turn it over to Joe. Joe's going to start, and I will cover a few slides at the end. Joe Butcher, our community preservation specialist, is here tonight to this item.
Welcome, Joe.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, commissioners and Chair Reddick. Yeah, so here we are with our short-term rental ordinance, ready to go. As you can see, I can't click through, so I need somebody to click for me. We spent a lot of time on this. I'll go over a quick background. Not a lot has changed in the last time that we met from our study sessions. So we'll just go over a quick background, the ordinance, what it entails, our next steps, and here we are with a public hearing. So we'll move forward. As you know, again, nothing has changed from last time that we've talked regarding, this supports coastal access. Our certified land use plan already includes the short-term rental policy. We originally rolled out this whole study session process back in 2018 and continued it forth until our most recent final study session in April. And so we spent a lot of time on this and really, I think, nailed down the nuts and bolts of what we heard the commissioners say, the council say, our community say, and where we're going to move forward with this draft. Also, for communication purposes, we wanted to make sure that we're casting a wide net to get all the information out there for anybody to be a participant or have their public comment heard. So anytime that there's a planning commission meeting, our e-news automatically a week in advance notifies everybody who's signed up through our website for the agenda items. And so this has been agendized several times and sent through the e-news. I also have personally emailed all of the current and previous operators, whether they decide to no longer operate STRs or not. I felt that if they did want to decide to go back and start operating again, they would at least be informed throughout this process. And then we've noticed all of the current operators with a letter in the mail most recently of this meeting. And then finally, our last notice was with the Half Moon Bay Review on Wednesday, the 19th of this month. Our ordinance touches on everything that we've discussed from the very beginning, from residential uses to zoning to registration requirements. We've spent a little bit of time on parking and exceptions, which is very discretionary. And if something like that were to come up, then that will be brought before you all, before any decisions are made. Operational requirements, which are pretty standard from all ordinances that we've really looked into. Performance standards, so we can keep an eye on our good and bad apples. The violation and revocation process, how we can cater to the existing STRs and get them up to our new standards. And then caps, we looked over the idea and the possibility of having caps, and we felt that it was not necessary, but we're giving ourselves an opportunity to revisit this in 6 months to 1 year, 6 months and a 1 year, so that we can determine if it's necessary or if we can keep as is. One of the things I just want to always touch base on that has really been a reoccurring factor of our ordinance, which I think is always just kind of important to consider and reconsider, is the primary residency. The primary residency is the thing that we've heard over and over again, and that we've stuck to based on our feedback and our direction that we've received, and that's primary residency for everything except the exceptions only in the CD and the CG zoning districts, and for single family residents of one in a mixed unit development with at least one or more residential units. And the other thing is inspections. We have a little bit of communications on inspections for those with existing STRs. That inspections is a very standard practice for all jurisdictions that I've seen, to make sure that anybody operating an STR is within the building and fire safety codes, for their safety and for the safety of the people that might be staying there. It's a one-time inspection. Once it goes through, then we can go ahead and approve their application and go forth from there. So in this ordinance, we talk about the registration and operational requirements. Again, this is really, really consistent. I've received a little bit of feedback myself about our requirements, and maybe they tend to be a little tedious, but they're actually incredibly congruent with most of the coastal cities that I've really researched, and a lot of the cities throughout California. It's just a general procedure that everybody has to follow so we get all the information we need moving forward. ADUs, as you know, we've already gone over this. I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on this. ADUs allow for short-term rentals if they qualify as a grandfathered use prior to the ADU ordinance that was adopted. I'm not sure, I think it was in 2018, but again, we don't need to spend a lot of time on the ADUs. If they've been grandfathered and have been running in short-term rental prior to the certification of the ADU ordinance, they would still be allowed. If they discontinue use of that ADU and then attempt to continue use, then it wouldn't qualify because they've exhausted their opportunity by discontinuing the short-term rental. And then moving forward, just to kind of give you guys an idea of with occupancy, just on the co-side. Now, these sources are from the chambers, and I appreciate them giving us a little bit of information. The sources also take into consideration the greater Half Moon Bay area, not so much the specific Half Moon Bay proper. So occupancy is down a little bit, obviously, due to COVID. In 2019, you look, they're at 68% rather than over the summer, like close to 100%. With short-term rental activity, I got an update today. Approximately at this moment, we've got about 32 that are operational, but keep in mind, this is during COVID. This is also the last 4 months that I've received this report of about 32 and about 33% occupancy. That's not in the slide. I apologize. We just got this information. But having said that, you got to keep in mind that numbers will be down a little bit due to the health orders that have been instated and only just recently lifted within the last few weeks. So it's not a high occupancy at the moment. We don't know if there's going to be an influx. We don't have or a major rise. We don't have that information right now. But right now, at the most that we've ever had, we've only had a close to 100 operational at its peak. And I've received feedback from a lot of the operators. They don't intend to re-register their place for an Airbnb or VRBO. And for more information, we actually use a third-party company that handles our business licensing and transient occupancy taxes that really keep an eye on these numbers for us and track the activity as they collect our TOTs. And one more time, this is just an overview, a nice little shot of when the STRs were at their most active, where the hot spots were and where we had the most throughout the town. And again, not all of these are active, but it just gives you an idea. And this also kind of helped us to determine what would or would not be necessary if we needed caps. Lastly, we did make a little change to our home occupation. I don't need to dive too deeply into this. Mostly our home occupation was a little bit more restrictive. For us, having an Airbnb, whether somebody's hosting or somebody is a responsible party, this allows for home occupation to have somebody that is an employee to be on site. And as for parking, we want to still minimize traffic to a residential area. So they need to provide for parking for any employee and only one visitor vehicle at a time, and no more than 2 per day, accepting deliveries if deliveries are going to be made. And obviously they still need to have a business license. They still need to go through our processes to make sure that if there's any other ancillary business on property, that they're also following our guidelines for home occupation. And the home occupation changes are consistent with our short-term rental ordinance. And then I will turn it over to Jill as we kind of wrap this up here for you.
Thank you, Joe. I'm happy to just cover the last few slides, noting that this is an amendment to the LCP. And as such, it's a zoning code amendment. And therefore, we've analyzed this proposal with regards to our California Environmental Quality Act requirements. And our city attorney has advised as well that this proposed ordinance amendment is exempt from CEQA. And we've cited the exemptions in your staff report, as well as your resolution. We find that this, having done so much research and having so many study sessions and input, it's been really helpful to see that what is wanted and what goes really well in Half Moon Bay, and to continue to provide for a wide range of uses in the residential zoning districts, in particular for some commercial activities that can be compatible with the neighborhoods. And this is something that the commission has been really interested in through the entire land use plan update process. We believe that the proposal is consistent with California Coastal Act, and it is definitely consistent with your recently certified local coastal land use plan, highlighting excerpts from the 3 most pertinent policies, although there are several others that would cross-cut with what's before you. Housing stock preservation is the foundation of this ordinance from the short-term rental ordinance side of it. And we're taking that very seriously as direction from City Council, who has continued to identify affordable housing in particular as a council priority. We know that allows losing housing stock, as well as competition relative to the rental rates that can be gained from short-term rental versus longer-term tenancy rental can push rents up for residents and can be really hard on the local community who needs rental housing in particular. So this is considered to be best practice in terms of housing policy to have a primary residence requirement, and we believe this is consistent here. You can go farther than that with the hosting concept. We've talked about that many times. We didn't go that far. You're going to hear, we think, some different perspectives around where we believe you landed and what we're bringing forward. Staff is really pleased though with where we are right now. You also had a home occupation policy and a short-term rental policy in your land use plan update. And both of them are quite a bit longer than what's here. They were intended to give our property owners and long-term renters lots of opportunities for economic benefits in the context of residential neighborhoods. Next steps, should this proceed through the Planning Commission tonight, should you make a recommendation, staff will prepare this for a public hearing before City Council and bring your recommendation forward to them. We would be looking at their August meeting. I see that Commissioner Gorn has joined us, so I'm going to give him just maybe a moment to click in here. Bridget, make sure he's settled. I will just wrap this up though. City Council will need to have a first reading and a second reading. Of course, if they have changes to make, they will direct for that, and they may need to have more than one hearing. We will adjust as we go with council. Of course, they've been, I think, watching your process very carefully and should be pretty well versed in this. Once council is through their second reading, we will package this up and make we would become an applicant then as a city and apply for an LCP amendment to the Coastal Commission. And then they've got some time to review our application, ask for more information, and eventually get it onto one of their agendas. We don't expect them to take this matter up before November. I would be really pleased if it got through them before the end of the year, but I'm just not sure. They've been really high volume, and they did a lot of work for us this year on the land use plan. So tonight on our standard format, and I noticed a few of our attendees have raised their hands, and so maybe this slide will help folks understand what's going to happen next. So the commission will have a chance for clarifying questions. I've added the word focused. We're really wanting to encourage the commission tonight to just quickly go through clarifying questions in the event that there is something that you really need to make sure is correct for the record. You've had so many study sessions on this, and you have quite a few members of the public in the room, so we think we'd encourage you to get to public hearing as soon as possible so that you have all those comments ready for your deliberation. And it's important for clarifying question period to not really move into opinions. And as we know, that's a challenging zone to stay in. So we're just encouraging you tonight because this is a hearing. It's very important, and we spent so much time on this. Let's keep that crisp. Then we'll move to the public hearing. Chair Ruddick will take over the public hearing, and I just want to reassure the public about that, and everyone will have 3 minutes, and Bridget will run a timer, and the commission will deliberate. And we're hoping for a motion, and reminding the public, as and Chair Ruddick will help you with this, that this isn't a discussion period. When you make your public comment, if you ask questions or bring up matters that the commission or staff need to address, we will do so at the end of the entire public hearing period, and we will be collecting your comments. You will notice that staff is typing furiously while you're talking, and we are paying attention to everything that you're saying. So your motion is simple. You have a resolution attached to your staff report with findings to support conveying and recommending an ordinance to City Council for regulating short-term vacation rentals and updating your home occupation code standards. And with that, Joe and I have completed our presentation, and of course Sarah Clark, our Deputy City Attorney, is here as well. She has a lot of background in these ordinances as well as housing law, and will be happy to support any discussions or questions that you have. So we're here, and I'm going to go ahead and take the presentation down so that everybody has a better view. If I can remember how to do that. Hey, Bridget, can you just turn it off for me? I've lost my button. Is it working? I found it. There we go. Okay.
I was having the same hiccup.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you, Jill. Do commissioners have focused clarifying questions for city staff? Commissioner Hernandez.
Joe, the historic occupancy rates of hotels are around 68%. There's a few situations in the summer where we're close to 100% occupancy. Occupancy rates in wake of COVID are around 37%. Do you or the Chamber of Commerce have any indication as to when you think the occupancy rates will return to pre-COVID numbers?
That's a good question. And we kind of froze a little bit, so I may be kind of piecing some of this together. I think you mentioned the 33% occupancy for short-term rentals. Did I hear that? So the expectation is, yeah, obviously it's down right now due to COVID. I believe the forecast is within at least the next year or two, it should be getting closer. I don't know that it will hit the close to 100% occupancy that we used to have, because as a matter of fact, I read an article today, it's a little secondary, but that people are still going to be mindful of distancing. And so they expect hotels to potentially take a little bit of a hit. But as for our projections that I spoke with the Chamber about, within the next year or two, it looks like it will get closer. But at this point, I don't believe we have enough information to really nail that down for the exact answer, unfortunately.
So are you or city staff familiar with the Coldwell Banker Richard Ellis forecast that is consistent with those findings? It says you guys are occupancy rates will probably be approaching COVID by Q3 of next year, and rates will be approaching pre-COVID levels probably in 2023. Are you familiar with those types of studies?
Yeah, actually, that was an article that I had actually checked out today. As a matter of fact, I think we're talking about the same thing. So I do see an increase. It's just with the forecast that we've received and the information that we got based on just our local studies, I don't have enough information to actually surmise that yet.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other clarifying questions from the commission? Joe, I had two quick questions about the monitoring that staff is signing up for. First of all, what is the trigger date that would trigger the 6 months and 12 months? What's the start date of that time period? And secondly, would the monitoring going forward give us a neighborhood by neighborhood view as well as the overall city, as you showed us in that very useful map at that last study session?
Yeah, so basically the start date, the clock would begin the day that it gets certified. So once we actually get it certified and we can begin using it for as an enforcement mechanism, then from that date, we can come back 6 months later and see where we are with registrations, with any complaints that we're getting, anything all across the board with this brand new ordinance. From there, a year out from that as well, we'll regather, we'll reconvene and see where we are. We'll give a little report with total numbers, like our influx of where we are with new applications, where we are with acting. And it gives us an opportunity to be able to discuss if it's necessary to add caps. And we can always add another 6 months or another touchback to say, maybe in 6 more months, we'll see where we are with that. That's where we are with at least checking in. I think Jill wants to say.
I do. I want to clarify a couple of things. We actually codified that we would have an annual check-in thereafter. So 6 months and then 6 months after that. So that would be your first year, and then every year thereafter. And we absolutely can give you neighborhood breakdown mapping like you've seen. I do want to note that if the Coastal Commission amends the ordinance as if the City Council approves something that we take to the commission and the commission amends it, their certification is conditional, and we would need to bring it back to City Council to amend it. And so the actual day of certification might not be the date of the Coastal Commission action. We'll keep you posted on when that happens. And of course, we will be making sure that we have communication materials on our website, and Joe will be first, and we'll have handouts, and we'll make sure everybody knows what they need to do.
That's great. Thank you for that. Any further clarifying questions from the commission? Vice Chair Polgar.
A very specific one, but I just wanted to make sure that I understood that for grandfathered in ADUs, they're grandfathered in terms of their ADU status, not the occupancy. Like it's still the residential establishing. There's still a requirement to continue as a short-term rental. The residency requirement would be part of that. Is that correct?
Correct. It's just, Jill, I'm not sure if you want to answer that or not.
And I know that you and I both just looked at the code, and I know Sarah knows by heart. There are 3 criteria that are required to be in place for an ADU to be grandfathered in for short-term rental use. And I think off the top of my head, I can remember 2 of them, but this is part of your ADU ordinance. This is not being affected by the ordinance before you tonight. This is something that decisions have been already made about with the December certification of the December 2018 ADU ordinance. The grandfathering was only for short-term rentals that were being operated as ADUs in good standing at that time, which meant they were paying their TOT and everything was going well. And the property needed to have owner occupancy. So that meant the property owner needed to live in the primary residence. And I think there's a 3rd criteria, and I'll look it up, or Sarah will back me up. But if it's an and, all of these things need to be in place. It's not an or. So if Oh, it needs to be continued use. And if it ceases for 6 months or more, even if those other things are still there, it's lost the grandfathering. If the property owner is no longer the owner occupant of the primary residence, the grandfathering has been discontinued. So all of that has already been set up in your ADU ordinance, and that was similar to this one, an approach to best practices for housing production and preservation.
It scares me when you say Sarah knows the code by heart.
Well, you do, but our deputy city attorney wrote a lot of that code, so she really knows the code. Okay, that's funny. Thank you.
Well done. Any further clarifying questions from the commission? Well, seeing none, I will open the public hearing on this item and ask Bridget to manage traffic.
All right, first person we have is Alan Seam.
Welcome,
Hello.
Mr. Seam. Welcome.
There he is.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm driving, so I'm not going to turn on my my video, but thanks for the opportunity to talk. Thanks to the commission for looking at this important issue. You know, I'm going to raise a couple points that I actually raised at some of the prior study sessions, which I guess haven't really hit home. But yeah, so I'm a short-term rental operator in Ocean Colony. And the first thing I wanted to talk about was the primary residence requirement, you know, which I understand, you know, the commission seems to be kind of fixated on that, but I don't really see why there's such a focus on that. I don't think, you know, whether somebody lives in a property for 100 days or 200 days does not affect how they're going to run the property. Right? There's nobody has more of an incentive to make sure that the rentals are run well, that the people that are renting it are properly vetted, that there's no disturbance to the neighbors, you know, that the community, the environment of the community is maintained. You know, nobody has more of an incentive to do that than a property owner, and whether they're, you know, living there full time or not, I don't think has any bearing whatsoever on that. And all it's going to do is going to cause people to have to jump through some administrative hoops to make places their primary residence, which, you know, I don't think it's going to have any impact on how it's going to be run. If there's an interest in, you know, limiting the number of nights that are going to be rented, because I know that was discussed as part of the primary residence requirement. That's one thing, but I don't agree with the focus on primary residency. Two other points I'd like to raise, which I think are just kind of arbitrary provisions that were put in there. One is the limit to 8 persons. You know, I happen to have a house that has 5 bedrooms that comfortably sleeps 10 people. So I don't understand why a property like that would be limited to only 8 people, you know, not counting 12-year-olds, 12 and under. You know, I understand that you don't want to have property that's over occupied or has more people than would properly fit in the place, but you know, I think you count the number of bedrooms, the number of beds, that should be sufficient to set the limit on how many people should be staying at the property. Finally, you know, this requirement to say that you have to have, you know, somebody available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week that has to be on property within 20 minutes is, you know, kind of an unrealistic requirement. I think if you know, we called up anybody on this meeting to say, hey, you need to be at your property in 20 minutes to deal with an issue, you know, that's just not realistic. It's not really a requirement that, you know, in my experience, there's basically almost no issue that has to be dealt with in person within 20 minutes as a property owner. So I just think that setting that as the standard for having somebody to be available at that level of notice is just over the top and unnecessary to deal with, any issue that's ever going to arise with a short-term rental property, in my experience. Thanks for your time.
Thank you for your comments.
All right. We have next is Crystal Lynn from the Half Moon Bay Chamber.
Welcome, Crystal Lynn.
Hi, thank you. I wanted to just give a big show of support for how this is written. I've been through this process in the last 6 years with 4 other cities, and I have seen a lot of diligent work, a lot of research, and what has come out to date, I think, is a really good testament to towing the line between what helps people be economically stable and people can make money, and as well as towing the line on what the community members want. That is a hard line to follow, and Jill and her team do it, I think, amazingly well. And I just want to send a big appreciation for all the work that's gone into this. And I think the way that it's written is really, really well done. So thank you.
Well, thank you for those kind remarks. Who was our next speaker?
Looks like Bridget might have had a little bandwidth issue there. So
Yeah.
let me see if, Bridget, are you there?
Yeah.
Okay, can you move Mr. Frazier over, Scott Frazier, our next speaker, or should I give it a go?
Sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
That's okay.
Everything went blank.
Okay.
Yes, I will. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
You're
The
back.
next person I actually have, okay, Scott, I will pull over. Hold on. Scott, are you there?
There we go. Can you hear
There
me?
you are. Yep.
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm Scott Frazier. I'm a 43-year resident, local attorney and landlord, where I offer commercial space, full-time residential space to low-income families, and I also do short-term rentals. I want to start by saying that I'm pretty disappointed that I did not get any opportunity to participate in any of the sessions. I received no notices, no emails. I didn't even know about it until I read it in San Mateo Daily Journal, and I received my first paper letter last week. So I feel that I've been disenfranchised from the process, and I want to make that clear. Nonetheless, obviously, I think the program is a bit misguided, and I hope you guys will retract it. I don't see any reason for this ordinance given the small amount of rentals that are here on the coast, including the fact that many of the rentals counted are several units in Nantucket Inn, Zabala House, Millrose Inn, Beach House. Several commercial establishments are being counted as units on the Airbnb count. All right. Another thing I'm concerned about is I think you guys are guessing on some of the economics here. Airbnb rental demand on the coast areas jumped during COVID. It didn't decrease, it jumped. And the reason you're seeing less units now is because the cost of the homes have risen, and people who are on the margins of owning the home or being able to maintain ownership of a home have decided to sell them. The more prices go up, the less Airbnb units you will see, because it's not economically feasible to buy a several $1,000,000 house and only get a couple $100 a night and to chase that down. I counsel a lot of people on these. I've written the ordinances for one county for short-term rental regulations. I'm extraordinarily familiar with this subject, which is why I'm pretty disappointed that I didn't get to participate. I'd like people to know that, especially in my family's case, short-term rentals were a way to keep our home, not a way for people to take housing off of the market. When it's been necessary, we've offered the property to displaced people, a local teacher, and other persons who need lodging. It's not simply for a giant profit margin. So I hope there'll be more opportunities to discuss this, and I strongly hope that you'll reconsider implementing this measure. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we have Joe Junkin.
Can anyone hear me?
There you are.
Yes,
Yep.
welcome.
Okay, sorry, I wasn't aware how that worked. Hi, my name is Joe Junkin, and along with my wife, Laura Bazzani, we own the property at 241 Myrtle Street in Half Moon Bay. We originally purchased it in 2009 to use as a vacation home for our family and as a potential retirement home. Our main residence is in Menlo Park. We started renting in 2014, and from the first day, we've been in compliance with getting a business license and paying TOT taxes. We've generated roughly $100,000 for the city. Our house is about 1890 square foot on an 11,000 square foot lot, has 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, and we can comfortably sleep up to 8 people. Currently, our average nightly rent varies between $300 to $335, depending on the season. We've never had a complaint. We keep in touch with our neighbors and have asked them to contact us if there's ever any problems with any of the guests. We frequently rent to families composed of 2 to 3 generations, a lot of children. Thanks to our reasonable nightly rent, we cater to families and friends with a wide range of incomes. I would like to ask the City Council to consider this question. When your primary residency restriction becomes law, who's going to provide a large home equipped for families and friends, exclusive use at a reasonable cost on the coast side? Your proposed restrictions will deny less affluent families the ability to gather in a private home in a quiet, family-oriented neighborhood and restrict access to the trails and beaches of Half Moon Bay to non-residents. We have no issue with limiting the amount of short-term rentals and fully understand the objection to a neighborhood block having too many short-term rentals. That's not the case in our block of Myrtle Street. We believe that a certain percentage of non-owner occupied short-term rentals should be allowed and not restrict access to residents only. And some notes from the California Coastal Commission guidance memo. They mention in that guidance memo that vacation rentals have historically been part of the beach communities for many decades. I don't know exactly what will happen when this ordinance gets passed. I wonder if you guys have actually looked into how many will remain, because when I rent with my friends and family, and I'm thinking of my extended family, we often want to go and rent a whole house and just be by ourselves and have a good sized kitchen so we can spend that time together. Some other quotes from the California Coastal Commission guidance memo. Some argue that vacation rentals should be encouraged because they often provide more affordable options for families and other coastal visitors of a wide range of economic backgrounds to enjoy the California coastline. And they strongly support developing reasonable and balanced regulations that can be tailored to address the specific issues within the community. Well, the key here is balance. And that's the last thing that I just want to mention is they mention a balance. And I don't believe this is really a balance by not allowing non-residents to do VRBOs and short-term rentals. So thank you for your time. I appreciate you giving me that.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, next we have, looks like we have one more, Ray Olson.
Welcome, Mr. Olson.
Should just be able to unmute, Ray. I don't, there you are.
Yeah,
Yep.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Okay, so first off, I really like the ordinance as it lays out. I'm a resident for 20 years on Correa Street. I live right next to a home that's a short-term rental. I've been through many problems in about 6 months before the pandemic. So I have an incentive for this ordinance other than financial. So what I really appreciate Jill and Joe's work on, the fact that you have a maximum number of people per home, that's very appropriate. And the fact that this must be a primary residence, completely appropriate, because the idea, the intent I believe we want to place is that this is supplemental income. It's not a commercial property, or it should not be a commercial property. And I also love the statement about person must be within 20 minutes if there's an issue. In fact, I have an issue with that, which is really around home occupancy definition, which I feel that person should be the primary resident. Because if you think about it, the home next to me can rent out at $1,200 a night. So if you do the math just on the weekend, that's $4,800 a month, where that person could then rent a room and be in some other location than their primary resident and make an income. So I don't agree with it. I agree with the fact that it's a primary residence. So what I have a question, occupancy rate. Is that just for the properties in the city proper, or is that in the coastside community? Also, I think occupancy rate is a separate matter. That really is a matter about, do we have enough commercial properties for hotel and motel guests? Not using residential zone properties for commercial use, which is the problem I have at the moment. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Looks like
If,
I don't have anyone raising their hand at the moment, so I don't know if anyone else is. Oh, looks like we may have one. Let's look. I have April B.
Welcome to you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you. My name is April Bingham and I'm a coastal resident. I have a couple of clarifying questions. One is around the data. One of the previous callers had mentioned the inconsistency in the map showing a widespread of Airbnbs versus the presentation at the beginning, which mentioned that there are about 35 of these short-term rentals on the coast. So I'd like to really get clarification on exactly how many we have and what the size and magnitude of this is. And the second question I have is on the boundaries. So what exactly are the boundaries of and scope of the provision? And then maybe actually, since I am speaking, a third question around the next steps in the process and how something like this would be ratified. So thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public that would like to comment on the draft ordinance for short-term vacation rentals? This is the time to do so if you have any desire to address the commission.
Not seeing anyone else.
Okay, well, if not, I will close the public hearing. And I'll ask staff if you prefer to address any of the issues that have been brought up before we go to commission deliberations.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We think we can cover some of these quickly, and then as you deliberate, if you uncover any other topics that you'd like us to chime in on, we can be tracking those as well. Just going to quickly review again the notice that has been done for this, and we're always sorry to hear when somebody hasn't seemed to come across notification. We try really hard and we use multiple sources, and I'll let him go ahead and get going on that topic.
Thank you. So yeah, as Jill was saying, and again, apologies if somebody didn't receive any of the emails that I actually received for all operating short-term rentals was provided by a third-party company that handles our TOT taxes. So I'm not sure if it's a matter of what email they have on file. Perhaps they have something incorrect. That's something we can look into. So that's a little bit harder for us to monitor as it goes down to a registration issue. But aside from that, we also do e-news for every planning commission, city council meeting, and just general informative packets that go out at least 10 or more days before any of our meetings or public hearings. And you can sign up on our website. If you haven't had an opportunity, you go on there, you can sign up for planning commission hearing, community development director hearings, city council. And I've actually gone through and personally signed up a few of the short-term rental operators myself for these e-news, just to make it a little bit easier, so that we are trying to get you informed as much as possible. And again, the newspaper published this, aside from the mail that I sent out personally to all the operators that I had through the list provided that were currently operating. The Half Moon Bay Review did have this published on Wednesday, the 19th. So we really did try to get this information out. Again, I apologize if somebody didn't get any information. You can always go to our website, or if you don't want to do that, my email is available. You can always email me, say that you'd like to sign up, and I'll sign you up for everything.
Thank you, Joe. I'm going to now move to trying to clarify. We had a question about the map versus the level of the activity that's occurring now. And this is something that we dug into quite a bit in the last study session. And so we kind of skirted right through it tonight. So this map is showing with a blue pin the location of every short-term vacation rental that we ever had in our system for tracking TOT during the entire time that we've done that. Never have all of these been going on at the same time. I think this represents on the order of 110 different STRs, and it's an accumulation of several years. The current activity rate, every time we check on it, it varies because the number of postings on the various platforms, they go up, they go down, and our tracker will tell us what they see, and it's only a snapshot in time. What Joe presented tonight of, I think about 30 to 35 that are active at this time was for the Q1 of 2021 only. Q1 is mostly low season here. We're past the holidays. It's not pumpkin time. It's not summer vacation. And so we're not surprised that it's so low with that on top of having the health order in place. We do recognize that there was a lot of activity with short-term rentals during really our high season last year, despite the health order. And in fact, a number of them were operating in violation of the health order, and it was really challenging. So all the more for having a registration process and the ability to more easily enforce such things, this is really going to ease staff's challenges with managing these. I noticed, for example, a letter to the editor or some kind of a comment on this, that the city was spending all this time and money developing this ordinance that we didn't need, and that it was so much like $100,000. And I just want to be clear, this is your staff putting this together very efficiently. And the only thing that is probably taking a little extra time is having more meetings, which is important for our community. And so this is a good investment, and it didn't come close to what the commenter put forth. And I don't know where that came from. So we just want to be really clear about, we have the information. We're happy to give it to you. So we did not mean to confuse anybody about this map versus the activity level right now. They're showing two different things, and it was a really good question, and we appreciate that. The other part of the speaker's question is, I think it was, what are the boundaries that this ordinance would apply to? And this is the city of Half Moon Bay city limits. This is not for the unincorporated portions of the mid-coast. El Granada, Princeton, Moss Beach, Montera, all of those other areas are covered by the San Mateo County short-term rental ordinance. So that's already in place. San Mateo County has an ordinance. I believe it was certified by the Coastal Commission some time ago. And so this is city proper, city of Half Moon Bay city limits. And then I want to make sure that we address for the good of the group of just what we know about the Coastal Commission guidance on this. And Coastal Commission, of course, has put forth some guidance documents over time on short-term rentals, and those are available on their website. We have been providing them to the Planning Commission in several times. We made sure that they're front and center because it's so important to be mindful of that. That said, the Coastal Commission just certified the city's land use plan with the city's policies for short-term rentals that I shared with you earlier in our presentation. And their certification of that land use plan, and believe me, we reviewed this policy with their staff, is an affirmative statement by the Coastal Commission supporting an ordinance that would be consistent with that policy. There's certainly leeway in terms of what could be in an ordinance consistent with that policy. We believe that this one is. We have been keeping our Coastal Commission staff colleagues up to date about where we are in our process, and they are informed about the intent for a primary residence requirement, and that we had explored caps with the Planning Commission. You had asked us to do some research on that, and we did quite a bit of work on that. And they provided some kind of cautionary guidance about if we were to proceed, what that might mean. And as we know, we didn't bring that forward after you had explored that in your last study session. The Coastal Commission has certified short-term rental ordinance provisions in other jurisdictions that include primary residence requirements. They've also approved ordinances with limits on the stay. You heard a speaker bring that up tonight, as well as caps. So they've approved a wide range of ordinance provisions, and the intent is that they would be in context with the local jurisdiction and in context with the lodging provisions that are found in the local jurisdiction. There are some jurisdictions that don't have the portfolio of lodging provisions that Half Moon Bay has. We have a lot of different hotels at different price points. We have 3 RV parks that are commercial. We also have a state campground with tent and RV space camping, and then short-term rentals and other things like, bed and breakfast inns and things like that in the downtown. So really the emphasis that the Coastal Commission now has is on lower cost visitor serving provisions, lower cost accommodations. And this is particularly bolstered by their 2019 adoption of a very strong environmental justice policy. So the concept around primary residence, you could still have a house rental under those circumstances. You may have more that rentals that are going to be a portion of a home. We would expect those to be lower cost and really be hitting a price point that could be very supportive for visitors to the coast along the lines of what the Coastal Commission is looking for. So we have absolutely dug into the Coastal Commission guidance and maintained our communication there. And we just want to reassure anybody who's new to the table tonight that this research has been done. I know we've presented on this previously, but we heard some new comments, and we're happy to hear new voices. So we just wanted to let you know some of that background, and also offer that Joe and I are available to talk to anybody after tonight's meeting. And that covered the primary questions that I got out of public comment. Sarah Clark, did I miss anything? Okay, Joe. All right, so thank you, Commission, and we'll stand by and listen to your discussion.
Thank you, Jill. Well, with that, I'll invite commissioners to deliberate on this ordinance. Commissioner Hernandez.
I just had a couple of quick clarifying questions, if I might.
Please proceed.
Are short-term rentals allowed in apartment complexes?
Under this proposed ordinance, they would not be. There would be very limited opportunities for short-term rental use in duplexes or triplexes if there was owner occupancy of at least one of the units. The intent with that was to support mom and pop operators of what we think of as missing middle housing. And this is feedback that we've had from the same group of folks when we worked on a rental security measure ordinance with regards to, and none in multifamily with 4 or more units. Mixed use with 2 or more units could have 1 unit in short-term rental. The idea is that mixed use development is mostly going to be downtown, and if the commission is supporting mixed use, we're doing it because you have really been trying to get housing downtown. But you also saw this as a way to be a little bit flexible, because this is a zone where there's a lot of variability in terms of uses, and it can be compatible.
Great, thank you. My second question is just around the primary residence requirement. So in commercial downtown and the commercial general areas, you have a more lenient occupancy policy. Can you clarify what that is, just in lay terms? I've read through this a few times. I just want to make sure I'm understanding the gist of what differs when you operate a short-term rental in the commercial areas, which are zoned for hotels already, versus the requirement when you're in a primarily residential area.
I'm trying to catch up with your typing. I think any of us could answer this question, but I'll go ahead and start it. The primary residence requirement was something that the commission was comfortable not requiring in the commercial downtown and commercial general districts. Staff's recommendation and what you have in the ordinance is that be applicable to only 2 types of units: single family homes in those districts and a mixed use unit in those districts. We would encourage you to maintain not allowing short-term rentals in the multifamily, and so then this primary residence is not relevant. And for duplexes and triplexes, we would continue to encourage you to have that owner occupancy requirement. We would be very concerned about losing duplex and triplex units to short-term rental use, and not having those as housing units. They're critical for your population. So we wouldn't want to see that loosened up.
The restrictions on duplexes and triplexes comes through in the language. I would just ask city staff to, if this is the language we proceed with, to make the primary residence requirement a little more crystal clear for the layperson. It's a little difficult for me, who's been involved in several of these meetings, to take the general meaning from the ordinance as written. So that's just an observation that I have there, because I was confused by the language that's in there. So that's all. I have no more clarifying questions unless Sarah or you have clarifying questions. I'm happy to just make a few general comments about where we're at.
That's fine. Rick, why don't you proceed since you have the floor?
Okay, so I'm always wary about people not getting notice for meetings. I will say that we've had several planning sessions. There have been many articles in the Half Moon Bay Review and the San Mateo Journal about this. I know I receive notifications about events through the general city website. So I think that it's unfortunate that this is the first meeting that one of the participants has been able to, was aware of, but I know that we've gone through a pretty extensive process on that front. I do want to thank the staff for the report and organizing the prior study sessions. I think the approach has been thorough and really incorporated the feedback that we've gotten from the community. There are a few folks this evening who may be speaking for the first time who are raising concerns about how this affects their individual property rights. I think they have that feedback is, we've had a pretty overwhelming feedback on the other side of there are concerns about not having enough housing stock and not having residential neighborhoods being overwhelmed for commercial purposes. So I think that I understand the concerns that have been expressed, but I think these are consistent with, feedback we've received before, but the overwhelming feedback we've received is that people want to protect neighborhoods as neighborhoods, and we certainly have a housing crisis. I'll also say that, given where hotel occupancies are now and where they're at for the foreseeable future, I don't think we have an obligation to add a lot more short-term lodging, but I do think that we have an obligation to make sure we're protecting individual housing stock. I think that that's important. I think that this ordinance, as it's written and as it's been clarified to me, really hits the note there. I mean, we need to improve the housing stock, and I think we're striking the right balance by letting people affect a commercial operation to support their incomes when they live here. It's unfortunate if you've made economic plans as this is a vacation rental and not your primary residence, but the purpose of housing stock is to provide housing, not to provide commercial uses. So I think policy 27, policy 275, policy 276 are all really adequately addressed by this policy. So I'm very supportive of what we have in place.
Thank you, Commissioner Hernandez. Other commissioners want to weigh in? Commissioner Gorn.
Hey there. So I was absent at the study session before. I did watch it and listen, and I appreciate the discussion of a cap. That was very nice. I guess, when I think about the concerns about short-term rentals, I think that this ordinance addresses all of them except one. And I think that, there is a concern, like when I look out 5 years from now, that there could be just a proliferation of short-term rentals. So I have no problem with short-term rentals. I like them, I use them. I want people to use them, but I also don't want to see the hotels disadvantaged, and I don't want to see the character of the neighborhoods change with a huge number of STRs. So my concern, which I originally raised, I don't want to cap stays. I don't think that's fair. I don't want to overreach. I don't think that it's a good idea to over-regulate. I want to let people be people. And and I definitely hear the concern about overreaching, but this is not a, like, I told all of you to excuse me? Somebody say something?
Sorry, I have some people playing some music in the background.
Oh, okay, all right. So I was saying it's not a cap on posted stays. It's not a cap on unlisted stays. It's what I was thinking about is just a cap on the number of them over, like in the next 5 years or in the next 3 years or in the next year. Like how many should we allow? Like, do you want to see in a year from now, 500 STRs around the city? I don't think that's going to happen. I also heard the city, in the staff report, it says there's maybe 100 and that's likely to go down. But I guess if it's going to decrease and not increase, I don't really understand why it's so bad to say, oh, we need, that we have a cap of say 300 over the next 2 years, which we're not going to reach. We're definitely not going to reach. But if we do reach, it would be a problem. So, I also heard the concern raised about the Coastal Commission and how we'd have to push it through the Coastal Commission, that it's a cap on these things. But, when I look at the language of the Coastal Commission, it says the Coastal Commission has historically supported regulations that provide for, and the first thing on your list is limits on the total number of vacation rentals allowed. And so I don't have to pursue this a ton. I know everybody's kind of sick of talking about it, but it does seem like a cap on the total number, a limit of saying, we don't want Half Moon Bay to have 300 or 400 STRs 2 years from now, or 3 years from now, or whatever it is. I know we review it in a year, but I think that you kind of forget how things evolve, and then everything's set. So if we have this huge proliferation of them, I think that it's wise to say, we need to slow down if we hit a certain number. So I don't know what that number is. And, I'm not like dead set on it, but I do think it's something that should sort of be considered. The other thing, there were 2 other things that I raised at the first meeting that I understand why they're in there, but I still have a hard time with them. And that is this 20-minute limit that I think it was Ellen Seam raised it again. I understand that it gives staff latitude and it gives them sort of a, enforcement power to have that, but I also just don't think it's entirely realistic. So if I was, renting and I don't always get my phone calls right away or whatever, I just think 20 minutes is a little extreme. So, and then the 8-person limit, I also like, but I do think that on a much larger home, if it really does have a much bigger capacity, that should be taken into account, and that the language in the ordinance should reflect that. I don't mind the 8-person limit, but I think there maybe should be some exceptions built in for houses that are much bigger than that. Okay, so that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Gorn. Vice Chair Polgar, please.
Thank you. I'd like to reiterate Commissioner Hernandez's thanks to staff for putting together the study sessions, and really I think that also reiterate a lot of his comments around what we have in front of us. I am quite pleased with it. I think it does strike a balance. I've heard that a few times tonight, and I think it does strike a very good balance. I think it's a very difficult balance to try to navigate, frankly, in this case. And I hear some of the ideas that, for instance, some of the commenters made, members of the public, thinking that we've talked about, for instance, limiting numbers of nights, and also that the reality of enforcing that is really onerous on city staff, frankly, and creates essentially a huge workload that is, unfunded, essentially. I mean, that's not something that's required that staff has to do for commercial, like hotels, certainly. So it adds a whole new layer of enforcement. And so I think that this is a system of, by establishing the residency, primary residency, allows for a reasonable, for instance, approach for staff to be able to manage our short-term rentals. I'm all about the devil in the details, and trying to manage things. So I see where we've tried to accomplish that. I also hear that there are folks who've made investments in anticipating that they'd be able to continue to use their properties as short-term rentals, but these are residential properties, and so they're not commercial properties. And so this is, as another one of the commenters pointed out, it's a supplemental use. So I think that's really important for us to recognize. I do. I think that, certainly there was a comment about how there wouldn't be availability of a large home as a short-term rental. I don't see where this would prevent that. Certainly that's still certainly feasible with primary residency, regardless of this. So I don't see where that is eliminated by any means. I will also comment that I had thought about the 20-minute requirement. It does seem kind of extreme. I don't know. I certainly don't think that it's, I see where it's important to have somebody available on call to be, if there's issues, but maybe that is pretty extreme. I would be interested in understanding, I think that part of the reason, my understanding of the limit of 8 people, not counting younger than 12, was to avoid circumstances where there's parties, kind of and events like wedding type of, things like that. Am I correct in that? Was that the intention? That's how we landed on the 8?
Yeah, so looking at a lot of other jurisdictions, there's always been kind of a cap on a lot of coastal cities. There's been a cap on a maximum number of course, excluding children. So 8 isn't just the maximum, and total, you can still have more than that. 8 is just for adults. But yes, ideally it's to keep it down so that it's not a party house, and that it is a responsible hosting platform, I guess, as is. And I've seen 8, 10 to 12 all across different areas throughout the state. But again, this is pretty consistent with a lot of other coastal cities.
Okay.
I would also add, that we do have a separate provision that prevents large events, the commercial and other type of events. I think what this cap really tries to do is ensures that even in large homes, you can still have significant impacts by large numbers of people with regards to parking, with regards to, having a group of 10 or 12 people outside in a backyard can create a lot more noise than you would if you had a smaller number, or trash. So it's just trying to keep it consistent with the use. Typically, even in a large home, you don't have 10, 12, 14 people staying there as a residential matter on a regular basis.
Thank you. The only other thing that I did want to, since Commissioner Gorin brought up the caps, the concept of the caps, I still I'm very comfortable with what's proposed in terms of the 6 month and yearly check-in on that and the opportunity to look at that and revisit it. I especially feel that way because things are so hard to predict, in my opinion, right now. And so I guess I really think that that's an appropriate way to address that. And we had so much discussion about kind of how the Coastal Commission reaction could be. It just, at this point, it almost seemed like if it'd be better to have that ability to revisit it and not necessarily bake in a cap at this point when it may be just an opportunity to invite revision that we may not be thrilled with. So that I still feel like this approach that is laid out here is quite appropriate. Those are all my thoughts. I think basically my overarching kind of theme is that I think it strikes a good balance. And so again, thank you to staff and fellow commissioners for helping to accomplish that.
Thank you, Vice Chair Polgar. I like your summary point about a good balance, because we've discussed, well, first of all, thank you to staff for the tremendous amount of time and energy and effort that has gone into this process, which I think has been a truly exhaustive process of research into what other communities are doing, making sure we listen to and understand the points of view of short-term rental owners and operators and neighbors. And I think that this ordinance before us tonight does an excellent job of summing up all the discussion and hard work that has gone into this. To me, it all comes down to the fact that STRs, when they are well run, can be indeed, as Sarah said, a good balance between economic help for the owners and operators who are doing a good job with them, but also preserving the character of our neighborhoods who find themselves with a commercial enterprise in a residential neighborhood. And more specifically, the primary residence requirement, I think, as Director Eek has said, is indeed the best practice that we're learning as we go forward, not only Half Moon Bay, but communities throughout California. Demanding a primary residence requirement is indeed the best practice to assuring that STRs operate as good neighbors. To Commissioner Gorns, and I think that all the other limitations that are in this ordinance, like the primary residence one, are well-founded and well thought out, and will help us have STRs that can be successful and well-run and not violate the character of our neighborhoods. To Commissioner Gorn's point about caps, in our discussion in that study session, David, I think the consensus was that it would be a difficult and unpredictable and very time-consuming process to enter into justifying caps today without more knowledge of how this ordinance, how reality will be once this ordinance is in play. And I feel strongly that this ordinance is going to do a great deal to improve our situation with STRs. We ought to move quickly to make it a reality, and we ought to do a good job at the monitoring to keep on top of what's happening. And it doesn't rule out the possibility of considering caps in the future, but I feel strongly that this is the right way to go at this point in time. Any other comments by commissioners?
I think of the
Commissioner
concern.
Hernandez.
I think the concern that was raised around, the 8 occupant standard is, it's a little misleading, right? If you read what's written here, it's 8 occupants and effectively an unlimited number of children, 12 and under. So you can put certainly more than 8 people. I would be amenable to raising the age to children under 18 and under, or under 18, I should say, actual children, is sort of a compromise, but it's still, it does lead to a pretty overwhelming impact if you have, 16, 20 people at a location, 8 adults, and again, virtually unlimited number of children. So don't feel strongly about that, but I'm amenable to making a minor modification. Also, the 20-minute constraint to being there in person is a little tight. I mean, it takes me 30 minutes to get from El Granada to, or more, to get from El Granada to Half Moon Bay on a weekend. And sometimes it can take 30 minutes to get from New Leaf, which is in the downtown area, to where I live. It can take a long time on a busy weekend as well if you're in a car. So I think I'm generally supportive of a time restriction. It's, I think most people would be, most of the city staff I'm familiar with today, including Mr. Butcher, who's in charge of enforcement, would be flexible if somebody had a traffic situation. But I think that it would be nice if we could just think about that language and maybe provide a little more flexibility. But like 30 minutes, maybe, I don't know. That seems like you can walk anywhere in Half Moon Bay in 30 minutes within the city limits, or maybe skate or run. But something like that might be a more flexible constraint. But overall, I think I'm very comfortable with what we have now instead of a cap. I think this is the right approach for us to take now. It gives us flexibility to revisit this in the near term, and it doesn't put an onerous burden on the people who live here. And I think that those are the most important things we need to think about. And I'm very comfortable with what we have written here. And again, as I've heard said, I think I may have said it myself, it strikes the right balance. So I'm very comfortable with what we have. And I'm curious if you guys want to pursue any of those points that I raised or that Commissioner Gorn has raised.
Commissioner Gorn.
Well, so I think your points are well taken. I do, if we're revisiting this 6 months or a year from now, I think that still will be a concern, and we'll just see how it is. In terms of the 8-person limit, I did not, when I read it, I read an 8-person limit. I didn't read an 8-person limit with children. So I still think that maybe there should be a provision for slightly larger houses, but I get I got it originally, and I'm certainly not going to fight it. The 20-minute limit, could that just be 20 minutes for contact? Because 20 minutes for contact seems more reasonable, but 20 minutes to arrive back at your rental property seems unreasonable. So I guess that's my only other thing. I think we can move on, frankly. But thank you.
I think that's a good point. You don't want to have a situation where somebody's not here, right? I think that's the point of the 20 minutes. But I think being in contact within 20 minutes and being reachable in person within an hour might be a more appropriate standard. Again, we want to strike the right balance here, and everybody in city staff is perfectly reasonable now, but there's always a future where people have different interpretations of things, and people may choose to enforce more harshly than they do today. So I'd be amenable to something along the lines of what Commissioner Gorn suggested.
Well, for Vice Chair Polgar, please.
Oh, I was just going to voice, I had been thinking the same thing, that a response at 20 minutes, to respond, but not necessarily to be on site, definitely makes sense to me. I'm not necessarily in favor of switching the unlimited kids to 18 and younger. I think that actually could really be gamed, like majorly. So I don't think that's a great idea. But that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, my point of view on the latter is that 8 people plus unlimited children is plenty if I'm in that neighborhood. It would be helpful to me personally. Would staff be willing to read the section of the ordinance just so we're all crystal clear on what the requirement is for response time?
Absolutely. Chair Reddick, we've been thinking through your discussion on this, and actually Sarah Clark can report out to you some ways to address your comments, that ways of coding this that I think you might be more comfortable with. We can also read what we have, but I think let's give her a chance to do that. And then we also want to hang on to the idea, if you do move into a motion, that we heard you say you want a little more clarity on the primary residence for, I think in particular, the commercial downtown and general commercial zoning districts, and we've made note of that as well. Yes, go ahead, Sarah.
Yes, please.
Thank you. So just so we start with where we are right now, the language says the person must be accessible and able to respond in person at the short-term vacation rental within 20 minutes to any complaint regarding the condition, operation, or conduct of the occupants of the dwelling. And I would just note that to start, that this is a very common provision. Most jurisdictions in California have something like this. Some of them have 30 minutes, but something similar to this is pretty common. And I think there's 2 reasons for it. One is that many short-term rentals, especially those that are operated frequently, rely on property managers to do this work. And so there's a whole business of people that sort of stand at the ready to respond to short-term rentals. And so it's not as though it's, the person, is over in the East Bay visiting family and all of a sudden can't get back. It's that they have someone else who has 24-hour response times available. The other reason to have it available to show up on site is that the most common complaints that you get are things for really loud parties or other activities where people are not answering a phone or are not responding to someone that's trying to make that kind of communication. And so it's really important to have, for the neighbor that's adjacent, that's like, wanting someone to respond, that they have the ability to have someone shut it down. That's not a police sort of activity. So that's the justification, I think, for the 20 minutes. If you do want something that's more flexible, I think there's a couple of directions you could go in. One, we could bump this out to 30 minutes, recognizing, of course, that there are certainly traffic issues in Half Moon Bay on occasion that may prevent someone getting from one side of the city to the other in that 20-minute period. The second thing we could do is we could just add a little bit of flexibility into the language. So I've seen jurisdictions have language that would be something along the lines of be accessible and able to respond in person at the short-term vacation rental within a reasonable time, parentheses, i.e. approximately 20 minutes. That way you have flexibility. It's an indication that, there may be traffic or something else that prevents someone. And then finally, we could move to sort of this dual track that I think I heard, where it's respond on phone, maybe even in a shorter period within 10 or 15 minutes, and then respond in person within, say, 45 minutes or an hour. I think that's just a little bit more cumbersome for folks to understand what is required. But if that's what the commission is more comfortable with, we could certainly code for that as well.
Thank you, Sarah. Good, seem like good ideas in there. Vice Chair Polgar.
Yeah, I really appreciated that, because it clarifies kind of the reality, kind of the practical reasoning for the 20 minutes. And so I guess I I would actually say, let's keep it as is, because the reality of what you're saying is that it serves the need that is, you know, of wanting to be able to shut some, like a big party or something down without having to go straight to the alternative of police or something like that, which wouldn't really be appropriate. So I think that that's, then I would prefer to keep it. I'm open to making it, you know, 30 minutes, or doing like, i.e., you know, that means approximately 20 minutes, you know, kind of, that's another, I like that as well. But I do like the in-person. I see the value of that, and thank you for explaining.
Yes, I like a reasonable time, i.e. 20 minutes is useful. Commissioner Gorn.
That's all I was going to say as well. The flexible, you know, leaving it open and in parentheses saying 20 minutes, that seems fine. Thanks.
Commissioner Hernandez.
I'm on board with that too. I think that's that sort of flexible language. I think that works. And I will note, if you read a little further up, if you know you're going to be away, you can put another responsible per party in charge who is also reachable and can be in person. So there can always be a delegation process for responsible party as I read the code. So I think that as long as that person is reachable, I think there's plenty of flexibility here in terms of how this would be applied. So I like the softer language suggestion that Sarah brought forth and would be very supportive of that.
Great, thank you. Do we have further deliberations on this ordinance? I see some head shaking no. Then I imagine if the will of the commission is to embrace the somewhat more flexible language that Ms. Clark read, that we will want a motion that makes that explicit.
I'd like to make a motion.
Yes, please, Commissioner Hernandez.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the change to short-term rental in the motion in the item before us to include softer language as laid out by our city attorney in terms of the time required for responsiveness. And we would also like to just make sure that the primary residence requirement in the commercial downtown and the general commercial district language is clear in the final writing of the ordinance. And I'd like to make a motion to approve this item as amended in my comments.
Thank you, well said. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Vice Chair Polgar. If there's no further discussion, we'll ask Bridget to take the roll.
Okay, Commissioner Gorn,
Yes.
Commissioner Hernandez,
Yes.
Vice Chair Polgar,
Yes.
and Chair Reddick.
Yes.
Motion approved 4-0.
Excellent. Very good. That being the only item on our public hearing agenda, the next item is Director Ekas's report. Shall we forge right into that?
That would be lovely. Thank you. And
Thank you.
Commission for all your work on the short-term rental ordinance. We will keep you updated as it moves through the next steps of the process. I do want to reach out again to our participants tonight. Joe Butcher is the primary point of contact at the city. He is keeping office hours, and if you need to review anything with him, please reach out to him. He will make himself available and is happy to get your input, and we will make sure that everybody is notified for any city council hearing, which we are targeting for August. With that, on your director report tonight, there's a matter for Scott Phillips has prepared this for you. Scott, I think, is in our audience, and he can click into the room if we need him. This is an annual temporary event that is held at Ocean Colony for, it's something you've noticed every year. We bring this to you as an approval that I can approve and need to tell you that I'm doing so. So you don't have an action. And so it's a little bit funny. If this applicant wanted to have a ongoing approval, we believe that our code would require them to actually get a use permit, which is a little bit cumbersome for something like this. Although having them submit all these plans, which you got a lot, as you saw, and Scott wrote this up carefully, is also a bit cumbersome. So anyway, we're just reporting it out to you. If you have any comments on the Ocean Colony tent and temporary event item before you tonight, please let us know. If you have any thoughts about processing such things in the future, we'd also be happy to hear that, because you know we're working on the implementation plan, and it's always a good time to potentially let your processes get a little bit polished up.
Understood.
All right.
Commissioner Gorn, do you, I'm sorry, Jill, were you not done?
No, I'm good.
Please, okay. Commissioner Gorn.
When I saw this on the agenda, I can't tell you how happy I was to see this moving forward, because, you know, it means that there may be light at the end of the COVID tunnel, and I'm so ready for that to happen. So great to see events scheduled again. Wonderful. Yay.
Yes, it's for a good cause.
But I don't have any criticism or comment. Sorry.
Okay. And our applicant, of course, is going to make adjustments if they have to with any other health order changes. But yeah, we're hopeful that that can occur. Agenda forecast on June 8th is your next meeting. Scott is preparing to bring 698 Terrace back to you. This was an item that was continued to a date uncertain. The different things that needed to be kind of refined and made very, very clear about buffers and other things have been updated and conformed in the plans. We believe it's ready for you, and so the item has been noticed again, and you'll have a new staff report, and we look forward to seeing you that night with that item. I'm not sure if I'll have yep.
Through the chair, can you repeat the date that I missed? Sorry, I didn't hear that.
June 8th.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, now hold on to your hat here, and you're going to be looking at your calendars. We have an item that is kind of special to cover with what we think would be good is with the Architectural Advisory Committee. The project applicant for the Hyatt has come forward with a revision to the project plans that is going to be assessed in the environmental impact report as applicant's preferred alternative at this point. And there's a number of changes, and it's an opportunity for the commission to get reintroduced to the project or introduced to it if you haven't seen it before. And also for the Architectural Advisory Committee, who has, they've done one round of design review, gave a lot of comments, and now there's going to be quite a bit of a shift in how this project is being approached. So in discussing this with the applicant and staff, our brainstorm has been to think about a joint study session of the Planning Commission with the Architectural Advisory Committee. Chair Reddick and I talked about how this could possibly work, and it would be a Planning Commission meeting with Chair Ruddock running the meeting. The Architectural Advisory Committee does not have a chair, and they are advisory, so they would be kind of folded into your process, and it would be a way for the applicant to present the changes. The commission could observe, I think, a couple go rounds of Architectural Advisory Committee comments on the design. And then I would really like them to hear your feedback and the things that you're looking for, because you see things differently and you have different roles, and yet you do need to have some connections, and they're advisory to you. So this is something that we thought might be important, so that they're not doing a bunch of design review absent kind of an envelope of guidance from the Planning Commission. We asked the Architectural Advisory Committee about this at their last meeting last week, and they were really game. They were excited to come to a Planning Commission meeting and to do that. And the other thing that we think is really helpful is the community's involvement. We know the community is really interested in this project. The Planning Commission gets excellent coverage, and you have televised meetings, and so that there's all of that is recorded so everyone can see it. And we would also coordinate with the applicant to install story poles for this project. So in advance of your meeting, those would be up, and people will notice them for sure. And that's exactly what we want. We want people to understand and participate in the planning process and not be surprised. So we are hoping to do this on either June 22nd or June 29th. June 29th is not a typical, it's a 5th Tuesday. It works better for the Architectural Advisory Committee, but if it's not a good day for the Planning Commission, we would like to know that. So we'll send a follow-up email and check your calendars and let us know if one or both work for you. And we will, you know, it's going to be the first time we've done this, and maybe there's some hiccups, but we think we have a great commission and a great committee, and we're confident that we can have a productive meeting in a joint session format. If you have any thoughts about how to improve the prospects of how such a session would go in advance, please give me that input. I'm happy to take that in. Of course, we'll still be in the Zoom format for better or for worse. And it's a little bit difficult to do design review on a Zoom screen, but the committee's gotten pretty good at it. And we know that you've completely adapted to it. So anyway, that's your agenda forecast. And what it means is if you choose the 29th, if that works for you, and we prefer it, your meeting on the 22nd would be canceled. So we're not adding a meeting. We're just picking one day or the other. All right. A few other updates, and then I want to show you something that I'm excited about. The Murata Bridge was approved by the Coastal Commission. We told you that that was on their agenda at your last meeting. Last week, the Architectural Advisory Committee saw 2778 Pullman for the second time. Story poles are up for that. Scott notified you about that. I think they're still up, so if you didn't get a chance to see them, please take a look at those. Also, 727 Main Street is predominantly a facade change, and it was a really good session on that downtown property. Next week on June 2nd, I will have an administrative review of an accessory dwelling unit at 440 Central. The Coastside County Water District, their urban water management plan is out. I sent you an email about that. I'm just announcing it because we know some of the folks that watch the Planning Commission are really interested in that. So they didn't get a notice from the water district, they can sign up for their notices, but you've heard it here. And I'm reading it. It's a good reading. And then I have something to share with you. Let me see if I can do this. This is, won't take too long, and it's the last item on my list. Can you see the map? Okay.
Yeah, I see it.
Good. This is your land use plan coming into our GIS system. So all of those map layers, this is your land use designation. I can turn that off, and here's your 160-foot contour. Here's ag soils. Here's, I'll turn that guy off. Here's ARC sensitivity areas. There's broad ocean views, coastal access routes, heritage downtown resource area. We're just getting started, but we never had all of this in GIS, and every single map that you have in your book that we're sending out to the printer now is going to be on our desktops. And eventually there'll be a public face of our GIS so that, you know, real estate professionals can look at a property they're going to list and click through and see what applies to it and be better informed. You can look at it if you have a project that we're asking you to review and make sure that we covered everything. And it also just, it's a reflection of that hard work. The bio is going to be the hardest thing for us to get mapped. What we really wish we could do is have it live linked to all the bio reports. That'll take some time, but just happy to show you that there's a lot of steps to implementing your land use plan, and some of them are really, really public, like zoning code amendments. And some of them are things that we're updating your resolution templates with your new policies. We're updating handouts as applicable. We're getting maps and it's infused in our work and yours. So we just wanted to share that with you because it's just really going to be powerful and helpful and help us do our work better. And that's my report.
Yeah, the GIS tool looks very cool.
Yes, congratulations. That must be very exciting.
It is.
To me, the joint study session with the AAC sounds great. I think that'd be a good learning opportunity for everyone involved.
And we've, I know this isn't an agendized item, but I'll just say that we did this before early on. We had broad participation from the public, and I think it was well received at the time.
Good to know. Do commissioners have any communications to share? If not, I guess it's that time in the meeting where we think about adjourning.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gorn,
Yes.
Commissioner Hernandez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Bogart,
Yes.
and Chair Reddick.
Aye.
Motion to adjourn.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for all the hard work from staff.